I'm a 28-year-old woman, and until recently, I thought my life was fairly stable. I had a long-term boyfriend, Tom, who was 29, and a younger sister, Sarah, 26, who was about to get married. Her wedding was only a week away. At first, everything seemed normal. Stressful, sure, weddings always are, but normal. That was until I started noticing how Sarah behaved around my boyfriend. It wasn't obvious at the beginning. Nothing you could easily call out. Just little things. She laughed a bit too hard at Tom's jokes. Even the ones that weren't funny. She complimented him constantly. How smart he was, how charming, how easy to talk to. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. She was excited, emotional, about to get married. But then the small things started adding up. She began finding excuses to touch him, a hand on his arm during conversations, brushing past him a little too slowly, leaning in just a bit too close. And when she thought no one was looking, her eyes lingered on him. Longer than they should have. Every time it happened, my stomach twisted. One evening, after a family dinner where Sarah had been particularly flirtatious, I finally said something to Tom. "Did you notice how Sarah was acting tonight?" I asked. He looked genuinely confused. "What do you mean?" So I explained. The laughing. The touching. The looks. He listened, then shrugged. "I think you're overthinking it," he said. "She's just excited about the wedding. It's harmless." Harmless. But it didn't feel harmless to me. Still, I wanted to believe him. So I told myself I'd keep an eye on things, just in case, and hope my instincts were wrong. They weren't. Over the next few weeks, the tension grew. Whenever we were around Sarah, she always found a way to sit next to Tom. She constantly asked for his help with wedding tasks, even when I was standing right there. Then came the barbecue at my parents' house. At one point, I went inside to use the bathroom. When I came back out, I froze. Sarah and Tom were standing in a quiet corner of the yard, far too close, talking in low voices. She giggled, that same laugh that had been haunting me for weeks. The moment they noticed me, they jumped apart. Sarah walked away like nothing had happened. I felt sick. That night, once we were alone, I asked Tom what they'd been talking about. He said it was just wedding details. Music choices. Nothing important. But I couldn't understand why nothing important required standing that close. When I pushed, he got frustrated. He insisted there was nothing going on. That I was imagining things. I told him at the very least, he needed to set boundaries. He looked hurt. "What do you expect me to do?" he asked. "She's your sister." And just like that, the conversation went in circles. By the time we went to bed, we were both angry, and nothing was resolved. The next morning, I knew I couldn't keep pretending nothing was wrong. Avoiding the issue hadn't made it disappear, it had only made it heavier. So I did the one thing I'd been dreading. I called Sarah. She answered immediately, cheerful as ever, talking about table arrangements and flowers as if my world wasn't quietly falling apart. We agreed to meet for coffee near her apartment. When I arrived, my hands were shaking as I wrapped them around the warm cup. Sarah, on the other hand, was glowing. Relaxed. Excited. Completely at ease. She talked nonstop about her wedding, the dress, the venue, the guests, until I finally interrupted her. "Sarah," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "We need to talk about something important." She stopped mid-sentence, surprised by the sudden shift. "What's wrong?" I took a deep breath and told her. I explained that I'd noticed how she behaved around Tom. The laughing. The touching. The way she always found excuses to be near him. I told her it made me uncomfortable, and that it needed to stop. For a moment, she just stared at me. Then she laughed. Not a warm laugh. A sharp, dismissive one. "You can't be serious," she said. "You're imagining things." I didn't back down. I told her this wasn't about imagination. It was about boundaries. About respect. Her expression hardened. She accused me of being insecure. Jealous. Paranoid. "Tom is basically family," she snapped. "I'm just being friendly. You're reading into nothing." But I could tell I'd struck a nerve. Her face flushed red as she leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Do you have any idea how crazy this sounds? Accusing your own sister, right before her wedding?" That word stuck with me. Crazy. I told her calmly that my concerns weren't about jealousy. They were about lines she was crossing, whether she admitted it or not. That was when she stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the cafe floor, drawing glances from nearby tables. "I'm not sitting here listening to this," she said coldly. "If you don't trust your own sister, that's your problem, not mine." And then she walked out, leaving me alone with a half-finished coffee and a knot in my chest that refused to loosen. On the way home, doubt crept in. Had I overreacted? Was I really seeing things that weren't there? By the time I walked through the door, Tom knew something was wrong. I told him everything. He listened quietly, his expression growing more troubled with every word. When I finished, he sighed. "I think you made a mistake," he said carefully. "She must be really hurt. Especially with the wedding so close." I asked him if he was taking her side. "No," he said quickly. "I'm not taking sides. I just don't think she was flirting. And even if she was, confronting her like that wasn't the right move." His words made my chest tighten. "So what was I supposed to do?" I asked. "Just ignore it?" He walked over and wrapped his arms around me, trying to calm me down. "Maybe you could have talked to me more first," he said. "Or approached her differently. Now everything's awkward. She's probably upset with both of us." I pulled away. "So this is my fault?" He hesitated. "I'm not saying that," he said. "But I do think you let your emotions get the better of you." That was when I realized something unsettling. No one was listening to me. Not my sister. Not my boyfriend. And soon enough, not my parents either. Over the next few days, Sarah stopped speaking to me entirely. Then my parents called. They'd noticed her distress and wanted to know what I'd done. When I tried to explain, they cut me off. "How could you accuse your own sister of something like that?" my mother demanded. "Right before her wedding?" They told me I was being selfish. Dramatic. That I needed to apologize immediately and fix things. By then, the wedding was only days away. I was supposed to be a bridesmaid. Instead, I felt like an outsider in my own family. Tom kept insisting we should still attend together, that everything would blow over. But the thought of standing there smiling, while my sister walked down the aisle made me feel physically ill. I tried calling Sarah. She didn't answer. I went to her apartment. She didn't open the door. At night I had dreams where I showed up to the wedding and everyone stared at me, whispering, pointing. I'd wake up shaking, convinced I was losing my mind. Everyone around me seemed so sure I was wrong. And for the first time, I almost believed them. 1 week before the wedding, I went to my parents' house to try to fix things. I didn't announce myself. I didn't want another argument. I just wanted answers, or at least some peace. As I walked toward the front door, I heard voices coming from the side of the house. Low. Intimate. Something in my chest tightened. I followed the sound toward the garden. And then I stopped. Sarah and Tom were partially hidden behind a tall plant, locked in a desperate, intimate embrace. Her legs were wrapped around his waist. His hand was beneath her top. They were kissing, not hesitantly, not accidentally, but like two people who had done this before. The world tilted. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It felt like all the air had been punched out of my lungs. Every doubt. Every argument. Every time I'd been told I was imagining things. Gone. I screamed. "What the hell is this?" They froze. Sarah's face drained of color. Tom stumbled backward, his mouth opening and closing as if words might save him. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered. But it was exactly what it looked like. I felt tears streaming down my face as my voice broke. "My own sister," I said. "And my boyfriend." Sarah started crying immediately, her voice shaking. "I'm so sorry," she said. "We didn't mean for this to happen." I couldn't listen. The betrayal was too deep. Too raw. I turned and ran. I didn't hear their calls for me to come back. I didn't stop when my phone started ringing in my pocket. By the time I reached my car, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. I drove without thinking. Tom called first. Then Sarah. Then my mother. I didn't answer any of them. When I finally got home, I packed a bag. Just enough clothes for a few days. Just enough distance to breathe. Before leaving, I sent Tom one message. "We're done. Don't contact me again." Then I turned my phone off. I checked into a small hotel in a nearby city. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying everything over and over again. The looks. The touches. The laughter. The way everyone had told me I was wrong. By morning, the numbness had set in. My relationship was over. My trust was shattered. And the bond one once had with my sister felt beyond repair. I knew I couldn't attend the wedding. There was no version of reality where I could stand there and pretend everything was fine. I wrote everything out, partly to make sense of it, partly because I didn't know what else to do. Everyone had made me feel crazy. But I wasn't. I'd been right all along. And somehow, that realization hurt almost as much as the betrayal itself. After a few days, I knew there was one person who deserved the truth. Mark. Sarah's fiancé. My hands shook as I dialed his number. When he answered, he sounded confused, worried. He told me Sarah had been distraught, saying I'd disappeared and refused to speak to anyone. I took a deep breath and told him everything. From the first suspicions, to being dismissed, to what I had seen in the garden. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then, in a steady, controlled voice, he said, "Thank you for telling me." He told me he needed time to process it. And then he hung up. After that, the silence was deafening. The wedding day drew closer, and I heard nothing from my family. Nothing from Sarah. Nothing from Mark. A part of me wondered if she'd somehow convinced him to forgive her. If she'd still get her perfect day, while my life lay in pieces. I decided I wouldn't go. That day would be mine to survive, not theirs to watch. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up alone. No makeup. No dress. No forced smiles. Just silence. I spent most of the day pacing the hotel room, replaying everything in my head and trying not to imagine what was happening at the church. I told myself it didn't matter. That whatever happened, I had already lost enough. That evening my phone rang. It was my cousin Emma. Her voice was low, urgent, and trembling with excitement. "Oh my God!" she whispered. "You won't believe what just happened." My heart skipped. "What?" I asked. Emma didn't hesitate. "Everything looked normal at first," she said. "Sarah was in her dress. Mark was at the altar. People were smiling. The music started. I held my breath. But when it was time for the vows," Emma continued, "Mark stepped forward and stopped everything." According to her, the entire room went silent. Mark turned to the guests and said he couldn't go through with the wedding. He told them he couldn't marry someone who had betrayed her own sister and destroyed her life by getting involved with her boyfriend. Sarah went pale. People started whispering. Then Mark turned to my parents and apologized. He told them they deserved to know why I had distanced myself, why everything had fallen apart. And then, without raising his voice, without creating a scene, he walked out of the church, leaving Sarah alone at the altar. Emma said my parents were in shock. Sarah was sobbing uncontrollably. Guests didn't know where to look. "It was like something out of a movie," Emma whispered. "No one saw it coming." I didn't know what to feel. There was a sense of vindication, knowing the truth had finally come out. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt heavy. Emma asked if I was okay. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "I never wanted it to end like this." After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at nothing. The truth was out. But at what cost? In the days that followed, the fallout was unavoidable. My relationship with Tom was over, permanently. My sister refused to speak to me. And my parents were left trying to piece together a reality they'd refused to see before. I knew healing wouldn't be instant. Trust doesn't return just because the truth is revealed. Family wounds don't close overnight. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something close to relief. I hadn't been wrong. I hadn't been crazy. I had trusted my instincts, even when everyone told me not to. And that mattered. I don't know what the future holds with my family. I don't know if my sister and I will ever repair what was broken. Right now, I'm taking things one day at a time. But if there's one thing this experience taught me, it's this. When your gut tells you something is wrong, listen. Even if the people closest to you try to convince you otherwise. Especially then. Some stories don't end with apologies. They end with understanding. If this story felt familiar, you're not alone. Thank you for listening. This was Block Tales.